You're listening to Life, the Universe, and Everything Else. Today on the show, I got COVID in Romania. Yay! Life, the Universe, and Everything Else explores the intersection of science and society. Original music is produced by Ian James, and this episode was edited by Marissa McCool. Find her on Patreon at patreon.com/QAF. I'm Ashlyn Noble, and with me tonight I have Lauren Bailey.
Hello.
Laura Creek-Newman.
Hi there.
And Jem Newman.
Hello.
Woo! Today we're going to be talking about the trip that I took to Romania tangentially, and mostly about the large pile of medications that I was prescribed when I got COVID in Romania and went to a private hospital.
It looks like, based on the sheet that you showed me, they just handed you like a double handful of pills, and they're like, here, now go.
Truly. But you can tell because they already had it written out, and we'll talk about this later. This wasn't like a list customized for me at all. This was just something they had on hand ready to give people who had COVID. Anywho, none of the things that I was prescribed was Paxlovid. I'm just going to say that right off the hop because that's what you would expect, right?
Right. I'll talk about that later, too.
Yeah.
I think you got better drugs the first time you went to Penzic and got the handful of drugs from my friend Ernest.
Yes, I was once the recipient of several different kinds of allergy meds in a baggie as maybe one of these will work to stop your horrible cough.
Ooh, mystery antihistamine.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow, sounds like you were being treated by a first-year resident.
Didn't I?
Well, none of my patients have either yet.
It's been 3 months, Jem. Give it time.
Ooh.
It's been 4. 5.
Oh my God, has it been that long?
It has been that long.
Oh.
It definitely feels that long.
It's hard
You're
when you're
graying
in hell
before
every day.
our eyes.
How long have you been practicing?
Oh, about almost 16 years.
Anyway,
So at the beginning of September, I flew across the ocean to attend a conference in Romania. I tried to get a pre-trip vax, but supplies in the city were almost non-existent. I masked up in the airports and planes and shops, and I still got COVID. I did my best, and I avoided it for a long time. This was my first bout with it. And I did manage to do a little exploring before I got hit, so that was awesome. The sore throat started on Saturday night. I warned my roommate that I was feeling a little something, but it could be anything. I hoped it was too much talking and singing at the conference. But when it didn't get better all day Sunday, I was pretty sure that I knew the truth. On Monday, thankfully, one of the people who was in charge finally found some rapid tests. The conference had not been good about having testing available. Most people weren't masking. But we found some tests before we went in to do strategic planning together for the last day. My test was instantly positive. The liquid had not reached the control line and the test line was positive. I let it go all the way because I know you can have invalid tests, but it was just bam, you
had
have
super
COVID.
COVID knew that it hadn't got you yet, and they're like, we finally got them. We got them, guys. Let's do it.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got them.
So given that the strategic planning session consisted mostly of, I'll say, some elderly ladies and the under 40s that they had invited to try and make themselves feel better about being all people over 60, I sort of ran away from them as fast as I could once I had my instant super COVID results. I do not want to be, and we were outside to do these tests, thankfully. I heard that another person who was supposed to be at the strategic planning had tested positive the day before, but nobody else who was going into that session tested positive at the time, including my roommate. And as far as I know, she never did, which is astonishing, but go you. I sort of hightailed it back to the little university dorm room that I was staying at and kind of figured that I would get some cold meds and rest, and there was nothing really to be done except for figure out how to get home, if I could maybe get home early and cancel some plans that I had made for the rest of the trip. However, One of the other women at the conference, who was also on scholarship, decided that she should take me under her wing and convinced me that I should go with her and a local-ish guy to a local private hospital and hopefully get some Paxlovid and maybe some official documentation that might mean something to an airline. That turned out to be a ridiculous thought. They absolutely do not care anymore if you have COVID. Their policy is basically wear a mask if you want and good luck to you and the rest of the people on your flight. They do not care at all.
Fun.
Yeah. And because of the way that my flights had been booked and arranged, I could not even change my flights to just go directly home. I had to continue through Dublin and then home. So it was a whole mess. Lauren and I spent many hours on the phone with Air Canada.
Ugh.
Anyway.
We hit them from both parts of the world.
It's nice that you tried not to create multiple super spreader events on your way home.
Right. They did not want me to not do that.
You win some, you lose some.
Yeah. So this hospital visit that they were encouraging me to go to was going to cost about $100 US. But again, I thought it might be worth it to make sure that I wasn't completely wrecked and unable to get myself home. So I masked up and I let myself be shepherded. And this turned out to be more literal than I anticipated. The local-ish guy decided that we'd walk to this local hospital, which Healthy Ashlyn is all about. You know this. I'm not allowed to decide whether something is in reasonable walking distance. And this guy was older, and I figured that if he thought we should walk, we'd be fine. It ended up being about an 8-kilometer trek.
Oh my goodness. Round trip or each way?
Yeah, no, the whole adventure of it.
Okay.
By the time I got
Way
back,
too long
it was
as
a
it
lot
is,
for
but-
someone who was sick. By the end of it, I was very whiny and bursting into tears at very little.
Oh, God.
Do you know the board game Sagrada? Have you played it with us?
Yes.
So the first player condition is who was the last person to be in a cathedral. And for many years, we've just looked around the room and gone, has anybody been in a cathedral? And so one of my goals on this trip was to go to a cathedral. So during this little adventure, towards the end of it, I saw a cathedral across the street and started crying because I was like, I can't go in there. I'll get everybody sick. And my friend saw me crying and was like, what's wrong? And I was like, there's a cathedral. She's like, I don't understand. And I was like, it's a board game thing. It doesn't matter at all. And she's like, okay, once I had explained how ridiculous it was, I was like, it doesn't matter. It's so silly. She's like, okay, let's just go and put you right in the doorway so you can say you've been inside and I'll take a picture as proof and then we'll run away really fast. So they were trying really hard to take care of me is my point. And I was in a bad mood.
I'm very thankful to these people who were on the other side of the world and taking care of my spouse when I couldn't.
Yeah.
So we did get to the hospital eventually. It was clean and shiny and beautiful. And we told the front desk that I had COVID. And they fairly quickly got me shown into an exam room. Everyone spoke some English, but not enough to easily get across more than really basic concepts. So it was pretty tough. They weren't going to let me bring my new friend into the exam room with me, but they saw how distressed both of us were when they made it clear that we were not supposed to go in together. And they clearly broke policy and were like, okay, we'll let the two people who can't communicate with anyone else go together, which was very nice. She was honestly much more dead set on me getting some kind of help than I was. I was already at that point ready to just order myself a teleporter back to my room. I had no fight in me. I was willing to agree to whatever anybody told me. And the doctor came in at that point and asked about my symptoms. It took us a little while for us to get across that I had already tested myself and I knew that I had COVID, not just that I suspected that I had COVID.
Yeah, maybe you should have brought the little tester with you.
Yeah, it's a biohazard as far as I was concerned. I threw it out. We asked about travel restrictions and Paxlovid, and without taking any sort of history, she just goes, you're too young and healthy to need that. And I said, okay. And my friend was like, but wait, she's diabetic. And but wait, all these things that I had told her. And she was very set on me getting something. And the doctor considered this for a little bit and was like, okay, well, because you're diabetic, if you're really scared, you could go to the infectious disease hospital.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, a whole nother hospital. That sounds bad, internally. I do not want to go to somewhere else. But then she was like, but you won't qualify anyway, so they're just going to tell you the same thing. And I was like, okay, whatever.
Would you like to exchange your COVID-19 for Clostridioides difficile.
Right. Yeah, I don't want to go to the infectious disease hospital where there's a bunch of other diseases running around with my COVID. So, had already mentally declined that option for sure. But the doctor said if I was worried, she could prescribe something else that might help. I was like, great, that sounds like a way to get out of here and have no further guilt from my friend or this doctor or anybody else. One of the things that the localish guy had told us was that something that Romanian hospitals do in a big way is paperwork. And he was not wrong. I left that place with like 6 full double-sided sheets of paper of like various information
in
about
Hungarian and Romanian.
Yeah, about this very short visit. At no point, I think it's important to note, did this woman ask me about any other medication that I might be on. Right? Before prescribing me all of these things.
Listeners, Jem did a literal Scooby-Doo face. It was great.
Yeah, it was pretty special. Even like, because usually when you say you're diabetic, they ask about how you're controlling it, etc. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. Did not care.
Like,
You're young.
Metformin has pretty well-established interactions with other medications.
Yeah.
For example, if you were taking metformin, the single most commonly prescribed diabetes medication in Canada.
Yeah. One of the things that she said was also an immediate red flag for me, and let me see what it does to Jem. She kept saying, just in case, as in, take this just in case.
I don't like that.
No. For example, take this med for a yeast infection 2 days after you start taking everything else, just in case.
I'm going to talk about this a lot when it's my turn to talk.
I figured. I let this go for the first bit, especially while she was talking to me before I had received the list of medication. Maybe it was a translation problem. Maybe it actually is really common here for people to get yeast infections right after COVID. I don't know. It doesn't seem to be a thing. I looked into it.
I don't want to jump on my own discussion later, but not necessarily common to get a yeast infection after COVID. Is kind of common to get a yeast infection after taking the antibiotic for a viral infection.
Or just taking the antibiotic.
Right.
Like,
Just in case.
Just in case.
yeah.
But
That's kind of ominous.
I looked at that list of medications and I'm like, this is a old lady who swallowed a fly situation. That's what's going on here.
For this. Yeah. That's the impression I got too when I was trying to Google a few of them. So if I was alone, I would have taken a look at this list, even with my very limited Romanian, and been like, okay, I'm going to get some paracetamol, which is just Tylenol, I think, and some decent cough drops. That's all that's on this list that's useful as far as I can tell. But my new friend was very excited about this list. Wow.
More medicines equals more better.
Yes. Okay, so she had recently had COVID herself, which is why she felt confident in like leading this expedition and interacting with me. Great. However, she was very upset that when she got COVID, the doctors in the States didn't give her anything like this. They didn't give her a list of all of these supplements and things that she could take, so she had to do her own research.
Ooh.
Right. Because she was... I'm going to tell you about my viral prescription pad.
Oh, goody. She requested to take a picture of my list of medications so that if she got COVID again, then she would have this list of things to have at hand. Yeah. And she, again, I had no fight left in me. I had absolutely no desire to contradict anything this lady was saying. However, they dragged me, these two lovely people, they dragged me to a series of local pharmacies because each of the local pharmacies was out of something.
Oh, no.
And so the first one, we were just like, well, they're out of this thing, so we'll go to the next one. That one was out of something different. So we're just like, okay, well, we'll get what we can and continue on our way. So we compiled this pile of medications.
Super spreading each pharmacy along.
Well, I stayed outside and they shopped for me. Okay. So that was good.
That's nice.
Yeah, it ended up costing about $75 Canadian all told, which was way cheaper than a similar pile of meds would be in Canada for sure. But paying for the vitamin C because I had no ability to explain to her why I didn't want it was rough. Yeah, that felt real bad. But I couldn't just be like, thank you for picking this up for me off the shelf. Please put it away.
My pee is already a color that I appreciate.
So I got back to my room at last, and I immediately sent a picture of my pile of goodies to the podcast Discord. I tried a few of the products. I'll let you learn more about that as we go through some of them. But I left most of them behind, unopened, in a common room at the school I was staying at for whoever wanted to pick up for example, some mysterious black radish cough syrup.
Don't you put it in your mouth. Don't you put it in your mouth. Don't you stuff it in your face. Don't stuff it in your face.
Yum.
You never know. There might be a desperate student who really needs like a placebo effect to stop coughing for the night. That could help. We'll find out.
Drugs for kids.
There was one thing on the list of medications that she had crossed out before giving me this ream of paperwork. And I had asked her why she crossed it out. You don't have it in Canada, she said. I don't want to find out you're allergic. And someone asked me, I think it was actually our listener Kaode, how she would know off the dome that we don't have X medication in Canada. And I was like, good point. And I looked it up. It's because it's a medication that's banned in many countries.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good times.
We also don't have Dexketoprofen. We'll get to that later.
Gotcha. Okay. That's exciting.
But we've got basically the same stuff. It's fine.
We're each going to tackle one or several of the medications / supplements / absolute garbage I was prescribed. Except I'm going to talk about the one that I was not prescribed. Metamizole. Or as it was prescribed to me, algocalmin. Algocalmin? Who knows? Metamizole. That's probably how it's pronounced. Metamizole is a painkiller, a spasm reliever, and a fever reducer. It's indicated for acute, severe pain, like after surgery. It is believed that it works by inhibiting the COX-3 enzyme in the brain and spinal cord. This enzyme makes prostaglandins in the central nervous system, and prostaglandins play a role in inflammation and pain and fever.
So it's an NSAID, essentially.
It is a non-typical.
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. It's usually COX-1 and COX-2.
Right. So So this drug, Metamizole, inhibits.
What? You're laughing at me?
I understood this part of the Wikipedia article after I read it today, and so I can confidently agree that with what you're saying, and I'm proud of that. So this drug, Metamizole, inhibits the enzyme, which makes there be less prostaglandins and thus less pain. And it's particularly effective because it works in the central nervous system instead of the periphery. And unlike typical NSAIDs, it does not have much, if any, anti-inflammatory effect.
Oh.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
So it's an interesting, different drug.
Child.
Metamizole was withdrawn from the Canadian market in 1963, so quite a long time ago, joining other countries like the UK, Sweden, Norway, and Australia, who banned the drug due to side effects like agranulocytosis, where your white blood cell count becomes extremely low, resulting in an inability to fight off infection.
Yeah, It's not the only drug that causes that, and we still use drugs that cause that, but
there's no better solution for some of them.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And we'll get to that kind of thing later.
This agranulocytosis can happen suddenly and without warning, even in people taking the recommended dose of like 1,500 milligrams for as little as a couple of weeks. So this isn't something that happens if like you take this for an extended period of time and you're not supposed to. It's like over the course of a amount you would get to recover from surgery, this can happen.
Yeah, so it's like maybe it'll never happen. Maybe it happens right away. Who knows?
There's no way to pre-screen like risk conditions, etc. I found another study that said that it was linked to a lot of drug-induced liver damage cases, yet liver damage wasn't listed among the possible side effects or contraindications. One of the sort of silent but deadly liver toxins that are apparently quite common among medications that are processed by the liver.
I wonder, too, if it might be like it on its own isn't as much, but if you're on other meds and it then causes like a catalytic effect.
I actually skimmed barely any of it, but I did see something about even when it was the only drug present, and something about how they like made sure that it was what was causing the damage by retesting it on the same patients and measuring their liver enzymes. I was like, wow, that does not sound ethical, but useful.
There's actually a lot of drugs that can cause agranulocytosis specifically, but the one that I always think of, because it was drilled into us, is clozapine, because it's like it's basically like the most effective, as far as I understand it, I'm not a psychiatrist, the most effective antipsychotic we have, and it is missing, or it has lower side effect profiles for a bunch of the other side effects that are common among antipsychotics, but yeah, agranulocytosis is bad.
Yeah, I'd rather take lithium.
Lauren never liked their kidneys.
No. Tell that to my,
She wasn't wrong about the comment about being allergic to it either. Anaphylaxis is a real risk of metamizole. The estimates are something like 8.1 reactions per 10,000 exposed patients.
Wow.
So much higher than the risk of agranulocytosis, but 8 per 10,000 people, that's not nothing. Mm-hmm. Many places thus have warnings that this drug, even if commonly prescribed locally, should not be given to tourists. So another reason that this would have been sort of a high profile of don't give it to this lady that you can't communicate with.
Not everybody knows what agranulocytosis.
Yeah, or maybe don't give it to this lady who might cause an international incident and decrease the rates of tourism to our country.
There are ongoing studies and advocacy groups working to ban the drug more widely, particularly in the UK, where some believe that British and Irish people might be more vulnerable to the agranulocytosis side effect. So far, this hasn't been borne out by decent studies, but there seem to be a lot of people who believe it, and a lot of British people who go overseas and manage to get some of the worst side effects. So maybe there's something there.
Huh.
Maybe paleness and sun-related something? I don't know. We are a pale people.
Technically, like naproxen, Aleve, also can cause agranulocytosis, but my understanding is it's rarer.
Interesting. Yeah. It ate my stomach. That's why I warn people.
Yeah, that's more common.
When they tell you to eat it with, or to take it with food, they mean it for realsies.
It can eat your stomach even if you do take
I
it
know,
with
but
food.
it helps.
Yeah.
On the other hand, as opposed to places like the UK where it's banned and they're trying to get it even more banned, it is hugely popular in Latin America to the point where it is the most sold medication in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
Really?
Yeah.
Whoa.
Knowing that it had been banned elsewhere, they conducted a study in 2001 that found that the benefits greatly outweighed the risks for their population. And there was a few sentences in the abstract that made me think that one of the conclusions was essentially, people will revolt if we take this away. It's not worth it.
That is a consideration.
Yeah.
Nothing in life is risk-free.
Exactly.
Drive safely on your way home.
Even in the States where it is banned, 2 small studies found that a largish percentage, something between 12 and 40% of Hispanic folks in cities like San Diego and Miami were either in possession of some or reported using it recently.
In possession?
Yeah. They had some of the secret drugs.
Are you carrying?
What other drugs from South America?
In conclusion, as we've been saying, I could probably find horrifying statistics about any drug I cared to look into. This one is probably safe for most people. It does have some very bad options for things that can go wrong. All in all, I'm glad that I didn't get the chance to find out whether or not I was allergic to this one or extra susceptible to having my immune system totally wrecked by it.
If you don't know just what it is, don't put it in your mouth.
And my other panelists are going to talk about some of the other ridiculous things that I was prescribed, starting with Lauren and the throat spray.
Yeah. The list was very long, and the pile of medications that you took the picture of and sent was not an insignificant amount of medications.
It's...
I could quote-unquote medications.
Yeah, it's really something, we hear about the placebo effect and the magnitude of the placebo effect being increased by the size of the pill or the method of administration. You get a stronger placebo effect with an injection compared to a pill, compared to a solution, etc. It never occurred to me that the placebo effect could be augmented by the size of the list.
Yeah. There's just a whole pile.
That makes a lot of sense, right?
People will feel cared for. Like my friend, she thought that I had received excellent care because I had received a pile of things that I could go buy.
Yep. More medicines equals more better.
Yeah, so as Ashlyn said, one of these ones was a throat spray. And this was a Propolis throat spray with colloidal silver in it to help with the sore throat, right?
Yeah.
The actual product that Ashlyn purchased, was by the company, is it Dacia Plant or Dacia Plant? Oh, just trying to think of the Romanian, we'll say Dacia Plant.
Probably Dacia.
It's a Romanian traditional phytotherapy company started in 2002. Phytotherapy, if you know your Latin, it means healing with plants. According to their website, their mission is to, quote, turn people back to nature and to restore nature to people. Upon creating such food supplements, note that word, we put in our solutions the entire essence of nature for one optimum intake of nutritive substances, vitamins, and minerals. End quote. Now, I don't know the regulations in Romania, except about the one that was just banned. Well, the one that we just heard was banned.
No, it's not banned. It is
Banned everywhere except there.
in a lot of other, yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I don't know the regulations about what can be called a food product and what can be called a medication in Romania, but as the company is calling all of its products food supplements and not plant medicine, they may have similar regulations to what we have here in Canada. Their English language website is geared towards being able to sell in predominantly English-speaking countries, especially considered that they have a distribution center in England. The research on phytotherapy is not as substantial as I would like.
So polite.
Yes, a lot of our healing products come from nature, but when I have a headache, I'm popping a pill and I'm not chewing on willow bark, even though they are substantively the same thing. Because phytotherapies are marketed as food supplements, they are not regulated and can interfere with other medications and treatments, so please always use caution. Propolis is also called bee glue. Yes, bee as in the insect, bee glue.
Is it glue for bees? Or do you put bees together with it?
This is what well, it's bee created.
Okay, fine, but remember, be yourself.
It is bee-created glue. Glue created by bees.
Oh.
It is another secretion from honeybees. It's the resin-like combination of saliva and beeswax that they create to hold the small pieces of their hives together. So where they don't want to put in a whole big piece of filler comb to hold them together, it's that sticky stuff that you feel on the edge of like a comb shelf, a hive shelf or anything.
Okay.
It feels like tree resin. It feels like sap. That is propolis. So no two hives create the same mixture of propolis, I found. I was doing a deep dive because of environmental differences. It's really cool. It's mostly made after they have harvested from like cone trees.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So they like get resin in a way.
They get a resin and then turn it into their own specific
That's
resin.
really cool.
Yeah, and it'll harden up very brittle and it's soft at certain temperatures. It's a good building material. But similar to royal jelly, people have touted propolis as a cure for, and I quote, diabetes, cold sores, and swelling and sores inside the mouth. It's also used for burns, canker sores, genital herpes, and many other conditions. Just smear it on there.
But also, it'll fix your blood sugar issues?
I think that it has been promoted as a cure or treatment for literally everything that can be cured or treated.
And many things that can't, based on that list.
Yes. And to quote my next line, to quote Sawbones, cure-alls cure nothing. Any research they say propolis can cure, all of these is both scant and dubious. As we were saying, you can't actually cure herpes by putting a honey-like substance on it. Please don't.
It will make your cold sore glisten nicely, though.
Yes.
Anyone for a bedazzled cold sore?
No, thank. Let's not draw more attention. So there is a bit more research, but still not much, that says it might be good to fight against, quote, bacteria, viruses, and fungi. Might also have anti-inflammatory effects and help skin heal. And yes, On the product website, Dacia Plant claims that this throat spray has, quote, antiseptic, antibacterial, and healing properties. It is a strong help for epithelial regeneration. Spray this throat spray on your skin to regenerate it. Right on the product box, this Propolis throat spray claims it has no alcohol, which is great. It won't dry out your throat. Standard. The box also lets us know that the Propolis spray contains colloidal silver. Colloids are defined as particles which remain suspended without forming an ionic, meaning in a dissolved solution. I can do
Chemistry.
Yes, I can do medical words too, Jim. The broader commercial definitions of colloidal silver include products that contain various concentrations of both ionic silver, silver colloids, ionic silver compounds, or silver proteins in purified water.
Laura, did you have a colloid with your breakfast this morning? She usually does. Milk is a colloid.
Ah.
It's one of the most common
not.
colloids we use.
Silver has proteins?
Well, I'm going to guess that there's silver like bonded into the protein.
Silver proteins.
Like proteins will have metals in them sometimes.
Silver does not have proteins, though. No.
Yeah. No.
That was
but
a quote from the wiki doc on colloidal silver. So
yeah, like it's bonded in there.
Yeah.
But
good catch.
Gotcha.
That is not one that I had heard before, though. When I think of these things,
Yeah, I'm just like, okay, silver proteins.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like iron doesn't have proteins either, but iron is used in many proteins. Iron. Most obvious example being hemoglobin and red blood cells to carry oxygen.
Colloidal silver concentrations at 5 parts per million or higher have been found to kill numerous infectious bacteria and to treat burns. Prior to 1938, colloidal silver was widely used as a mainstream antibiotic. Silver is expensive, and the pharmaceutical industry later developed faster-acting, less expensive sulfa drugs and then penicillin. And colloidal silver was sort of discontinued as the main one. Mm-hmm. It's been approved by the EPA as a disinfectant for hospitals and medical centers, though.
Mm-hmm.
Taking too much colloidal silver over an extended period of time can lead to a condition called argyria, so argent as in silver, argyria, one symptom of which is a blue or gray discoloration of the skin.
Yep.
Smurf disease.
Mm-hmm. It is very funny looking.
Except when it's very tragic, like in a...
Yeah.
We were watching that documentary.
That wasn't
Earth
tragic.
Mother?
She did that to herself.
Oh,
Earth Mother.
that thing was. Oh,
Yeah, we were watching it on your Plex.
Yeah.
In the beginning, it seems like a fun cult where there's sex and weed and food and no responsibilities, and then the colloidal silver comes out.
I don't know. It felt off a long time. Also, like she had a really terrible eating disorder and put everybody else in an eating disorder, and
then
just
they went into that whole like QAnon bullshit and everything.
Oh yeah, just the way that they got into their. Oh yeah. I mean, it's a fun watch. It's a fun watch, but it's very tragic.
Yeah.
It's a sad story.
Argyria was not the worst of her problems.
No, but that was a good example of like how like you could watch it happen.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Argyria does occur when sunlight interacts with silver deposited in the skin in the same way that silver particles in photographic film darken when exposed to sunlight. And as somebody who has worked in a dark room, it's really fun to watch the silver just kind of bubble up. It's really cool. Argyria can occur both via ingestion of silver or through topical application of silver to the skin. Mm-hmm. So anyway, you got this colloidal silver that you're putting it on your body or in your body, it can cause the smurf. Like propolis, colloidal silver is sold as a dietary supplement and not a medicine. In 1999, the American FDA banned companies from claiming that it has any therapeutic value, so it can't be marketed as a medicine in the States.
We got to get on that with other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I know they still get around it every day, but geez, at least it helps.
Yeah.
So the FDA banned it from being a medicine, claims of it being a medicine in 1999, and 2002, the Australian Therapeutic Goods Administration removed its exemption as well, because they had an exemption for colloidal silver, saying you can say it has a therapeutic effect, but it no longer is not able. You are no longer able to say it, and saying that the Australian Therapeutic Goods Administration said it has no therapeutic value, and that its harms outweigh any small benefits, especially since continued use can also create silver-resistant strains of bacteria. You can create a superbacteria if you use too much colloidal silver.
That's interesting. I
was a
did
new one
not.
to me.
I did
Yeah.
not know that. I assumed that it was. Don't know how. I know silver has antibacterial effects, but I did not know how it functions. So I'd assumed it was something like alcohol or other surgical preps, where you can't really develop resistance to the antiseptic effects of alcohol. Just because because of the way the physical process works.
It just murders it.
Yeah.
No, but apparently bacteria can become resistant to silver.
Interesting.
Terrifying. So this throat spray has both bee glue and silver, but no alcohol, both of which have been proven to not provide any medicinal relief. But the spray could still have some soothing properties, right? Throat spray, could be like a mug of honey and lemon when you have a sore throat or whatever, it makes you feel better.
Sure.
Ashlyn, what was taking propolis like?
Possibly the worst part of having COVID. I decided to try it once for science before I left it behind forever. And you know what? I was willing to believe in the back of my head, maybe this will feel amazing and my throat will feel better. And I will just be like, I don't know why it worked, but it feels better. Nope. Just felt like burning and tasted like terrible badness with a hint of chamomile.
I had here in my list, Ashlyn explains the horrors.
Not one of Celestial Seasoning's most popular flavors.
It was a bad time.
My
Would
next
not
question was
recommend.
going to ask, did it help at all? But you've sort of summed that up saying
No. I think it felt worse after. It was kind of burny. Yeah, I do not know what the point of that thing is.
And
Very
so what
bad.
did you do with the spray?
I left it behind in my dorm room for someone else to deal with. I'm very sorry. I was sick.
So to sum up, it's a vile tasting spray that contains 2 ingredients that are either ineffective or could do active harm if used over a period of time. Though I didn't get a chance to try it myself, I'm going to go with Ashlyn's recommendations and not frickin' bother.
While we're on the subject of phytomedicine, can I chime in with one of the other things on the
Go
list
for
here
it.
quickly? I don't think Laura was going to cover this one, but also on your list was quercetin.
Quercetin.
Oh,
Quercetin.
yeah. I briefly looked that up. What a
Were you-
weird one.
Were you going to talk about
No.
this one? No.
No.
Okay.
Ooh, quercetation. Gay whales.
So I believe the prescription was for quercetin, 250 to 500 milligrams PO daily. So quercetin is a plant flavol. It's a phytochemical, and it's found in a bunch of stuff that we commonly eat, like kale,
Maybe
red
you
onions,
commonly eat that.
red onions, cranberries, and
Tofu?
lingonberries.
Why would we ever think that?
Because we were talking lingonberries
Well, I know that,
before.
but I'm
Not
not
like it's
sure
our
that we
favorite
had.
food.
Because they are very closely related to cranberries.
That
They are.
makes sense, yeah.
No, not. I don't think it's in blueberries. Maybe it is. So quercetin, another one of these plant phytols that is commonly claimed to have all sorts of benefits. And there have been some small, not particularly rigorous basic trials that have been done that show potentially some effect in a few cases. However, it has not been, none of these effects have been substantiated on a clinical basis in patients, and there is currently no high-quality evidence that it is effective for treating any disease or condition. In fact, the FDA in the US has sent out a whole bunch of letters to a bunch of people hawking this stuff, saying that you are not allowed to claim it can be used to treat diseases, as they often do, as they should. The FDA, I mean, not the people making the claims, but it's one of those things that's generally sold as a supplement because that allows them to get around any claims of any benefit or efficacy. And just a reminder, as Laura was mentioning to me earlier today, anything that claims to boost or augment your immune system, you probably don't want to take, because what is a boosted immune system? An immune system that is working overtime? That is an autoimmune disease.
Yay.
You might find your eyeballs.
Yeah, I looked at that one. It sort of looked like one of those clear gelatin pods full of pollen. And I was like, I'm going to not find out whether I'm allergic to this too. And did not take it. So thank you for taking us through the throat spray adventure. Laura is going to talk about a couple of the supplements that I received.
I am. So I was not surprised to see these on the list. We're talking your standards, and many of our listeners will be familiar with these from back in old 2020 and 2021 when vitamin D and zinc were going to cure everybody before we had vaccines and we were all just super scared and didn't want to get sick and that. So vitamin D, generally good thing. Humans need.
Human need vitamin D.
Yes, exactly. Humans do need vitamin D, and many of us, especially here in the Northern Hemisphere,
Are human, yes.
I
Go
take
on.
a supplement. I take a vitamin
don't
D every
get
day.
enough, and we have pretty low levels. I was having this conversation with a family member a couple weeks ago that we don't bother testing for it here, partially from cost, but partially because we just go, nah, you're deficient, just take some.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yep.
Yeah, it won't
There's
hurt you.
so little risk,
Yeah.
and you probably need it.
Yeah. And I was one of the people who, in the early days of COVID, was reading the studies about like vitamin D deficiency being linked to worse outcomes and being like, it can hurt.
Yeah.
Like, why not?
Yeah.
I was a vitamin D pusher for a little bit there.
Sure.
And it's at the time, totally
Yeah.
not an unsafe thing, especially if you're using drugstore doses and you're not doing a whole bottle a day. Like, that's an okay thing, right? And
Now that we know better, we've changed our
yeah, and you're right. We do have decent evidence to say that people with low vitamin D tended to get sick more and had worse outcomes overall because vitamin D is linked to the immune system functioning. And so inadequate levels tend to cause worse illness. So all of this is true. This is fine. What we never determined, though, is if taking vitamin D, or at the time, rather, if taking vitamin D then helped to cure it if you were sick.
Or treat anything about it at all.
Right, exactly, right? Because it's very different to be like, if you have low levels, you're more likely to get sick compared to taking it now makes you better. These are
Right.
very different things. They do not one-to-one by any means,
And
right?
usually vitamin deficiencies take more than like 5 days or so to fix themselves, right?
Yeah, especially at drugstore doses,
Right.
which is what you were prescribed.
Yes. Yeah.
So for anybody who's not familiar, vitamin D recommendations, daily recommendations vary from country to country. For most adults, 1,000 units a day is like pretty reasonable. Some populations are recommended more than that, like 3,000 a day. Some are even more than that based on specific populations, but it's in the single thousands range for most
I take
people.
1,500 a day.
Yeah, like that's pretty average. And so like anywhere in that like 1,000 to 3,000 units a day is usually totally fine and average for
And it's one of the
most
ones where
people.
if you have too much, it just like gets put into your urine, right? Like there's no... No, it's a fat one?
So it's a fat soluble
Okay.
vitamin.
A,
so
D, E, and K.
yeah. So you do have to be more you have to pay more attention to it, and it is slightly easier to overdose
Right.
because of that, because it gets stored in fat tissue. And there have been cases where people have taken extreme amounts of vitamin D in very short periods of time, and then they get hypercalcemia because all of a sudden they start absorbing massive amounts of calcium, and their body can't calibrate it, and so then their blood levels go too high. So it can, but this is rare, right? These are those case study one-off things. This doesn't happen. And again, this does not happen on drugstore doses or on like daily recommended intake. This doesn't happen for that. So maybe this doc just wanted you to get enough in general. Maybe she's also going off the, hey, you're a pale person from the Northern Hemisphere. Just take it. It's not going to hurt.
But I
right?
went to Europe with a carry-on. I didn't have room for all that shit. Like I literally had to leave some of it behind, or a shirt or something.
Yeah. I don't know. So that's that. But we have more data now because it's been a few years that we've been looking at this COVID thing. And they actually did some trials. What happens when we give people vitamin D? And on a overview of some of the research that I've looked at, in many of the trials, there really wasn't much difference. What they did notice is that, let me back up here. When they tested difference in outcomes for COVID, consistently they found that people who were already on vitamin D supplements and or replete in vitamin D had fewer symptoms and got sick less often than people who had lower levels. And in one of the studies I was looking at, they did 3 groups. They had a group that had been on supplements already. They had a group that started supplements like when they got sick, and then they had a group that started like a few days after getting sick, I think.
Oh,
I'll put a
really
link in the
cool
show
design.
notes. So yeah, they tried to look at it at different time points, and really at the end of the day, the 2 groups that started it after getting sick showed no difference. Although they had initial differences, it wasn't statistically significant, and it really wasn't even clinically significant at the end of the day. The only group that consistently did better was the people who were already on supplements.
Yeah.
So the thing is, it's like, even if you're going with that logic, it only works if you were already supplementing.
Yeah.
If you're sick now and you weren't doing it, it's not going to do
Once
anything.
your body is fighting something off, reinforcing that is not going to be as effective.
And even on that, a lot of the studies that looked at vitamin D were giving definitely magnitudes above drugstore doses for those treatments too.
Right.
It's things that you would need a prescription for, or even like IV in some cases. Like they were like high dose things. Interestingly, even on those high dose things, like on the whole, they still didn't see a difference, right? It was one of those like, yes, we see the link, but this can't cure anything.
Yeah.
Interestingly, even for some of those high doses for some people, not everybody getting those massive doses even reached like a replete vitamin D level in the short periods
because
of
you
time.
can't like properly metabolize it. If there's something else missing there, you're gonna bottleneck it. And
and vitamin D metabolism can be affected by a lot of different things. And part of the reason why people with various chronic illnesses have lower vitamin D is because they're not able to metabolize it as well as maybe not getting enough in their diet or don't go outside or all these other factors, right? So that kind of makes sense. So even on massive doses, people couldn't just suddenly get like, oh, I have enough now. Not everybody did. So no, that amount of vitamin D, a couple thousand units a day, not going to hurt you in the long run, but it's not going to do anything for COVID. And the research really looks at that. Zinc is another one that I heard a lot about at the beginning of COVID. There was a lot of talk in dietitian circles about this. Zinc is one of those minerals that is used in so many different parts of body functions and body systems.
And outside the body, too. The Simpsons had a whole reel on Come Back, Zinc.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Whenever I hear Zinc, I think of this horrible little short from like 30 years ago.
I forgot about that. Yeah, that was good. Yeah. But yeah, zinc is used in all kinds of different things. So it's one of those, we call it a trace mineral. And you really do need enough of it. And your immune system does not function properly if you don't have enough zinc in your diet.
that fact is like the whole reason cold effects exists, right?
Yeah.
I hate that stuff so much.
Isn't there other stuff in that too? I've never taken it. I know there's zinc in it, but I don't like anytime you think zinc and medication, like it's like colds and zinc go together hand in hand. Peanut butter and jelly here, people.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it also has vitamin C in it.
Oh, for sure.
I thought I had
it's
like
just so bullshit.
Yeah, I thought there was like
Tylenol.
even other stuff. Anyway, I don't know.
Did you say Tylenol?
I thought it had like acetaminophen in it.
No.
It's
Have any
non.
real drugs?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
No, because
I'm thinking of
they
something
couldn't
else
market
then.
it as a natural health product, and also it'd be extremely dangerous for children.
Yeah, that's true.
yeah.
My bad. I'm thinking of something else then. Sorry, Laura.
No, that's okay. So zinc. Everybody loves zinc, right? We need zinc. Your immune system doesn't work properly.
Don't use intranasal zinc though; it can cause anosmia.
Yeah, don't do that. But so
And what Jem just said means don't squirt it in your nose.
correct.
Because you will lose your sense of smell.
Yes.
Yeah. So zinc is another one that because of its link to these other viral illnesses, people gravitated towards right away when it came to COVID.
Yeah, and I love actually that you picked the two that I actually decided, fine, I'll take this.
Well, because especially at the doses, like they didn't recommend huge doses. Zinc is something you do have to be really careful of, like taking a lot of mineral supplements in high doses. Yours was what, 15 milligrams?
Yeah, well, I
a
noticed that
day
they
or
were nothing
something?
exciting, so like couldn't hurt me. Might as well.
Yeah, that's a pretty reasonable dose as long as you're sticking to that. it's probably not going to be an issue for you.
I also had the thought, like, I'm probably susceptible to placebo too. Wee! Let's just take whatever doesn't look dangerous.
You know what? Sometimes you just have to feel better. That's okay. That's fine. I'm like, truly no judgment here. So what does...
Little judgment.
Oh, man. Yeah. So does zinc actually do anything for COVID? Evidence is, I don't want to say limited, because there were a fair number of studies, but not convincing for me. The best I found, the most positive in favor evidence I found, was that a meta-analysis that said, yeah, it may reduce, it looks like it probably does reduce mortality, but it doesn't reduce symptoms. So if you get sick, you might be less likely to die, but you're still going to feel like crap.
Yeah.
Either way. But even then, the effect size, it was a meta-analysis on not a lot of studies, so the effect size is kind of iffy and that. And through the research, looking at several other RCTs, I definitely found some that were like, yeah, we stopped it because there was no point in continuing the study because we were seeing absolutely no difference, no benefit, no nothing. So that's a lot of the evidence that is out there too. So I don't know, like low dose zinc, again, it's probably not going to hurt you, but it's not going to make you feel any better. If you're really, like, if you're someone who's severely ill enough that mortality could be on the horizon for you with this illness, then yeah, maybe zinc might be part of it, but also probably Paxlovid and ICU care, hopefully.
Like probably if you were up on all of your trace minerals and vitamins, that would be better for you.
Yeah, lots of these things, but it really doesn't look like zinc is going to be a magic cure. The duration of illness wasn't significantly different than people who weren't taking zinc. And like I said, the symptoms were the same. Yeah. So, no. Sorry, Ashlyn.
Yeah, I think the zinc and the vitamin D got left behind in Ireland rather than Romania. I was like, okay, well, I tried this for a few days. It's going to do whatever it was going to do. No more room in the carry-on. Jem is going to close us off by talking about a bunch of the rest of this list of random actual medications that I got.
Yeah. So nobody's talking about the radish syrup.
No, I don't think so.
Oh, I thought you were going to, but
no.
Okay.
I always wanted to talk about the colloidal silver.
Okay.
Bee spit.
Is the other thing that was for cough. Okay.
Yeah.
So many things.
No,
okay, I can talk about the black radish syrup a little bit. Because I looked it up a little bit.
Oh, sure. I didn't look into it at all.
Well, mostly I was like, what? Because like you, I was looking at this list going, okay, I see what that is. I see what that is. What is this? So Google Translate to the rescue, and I'm like, black radish syrup. So I type that in, and Google auto-corrects it to for cough. So I follow that link. Mm-hmm. Nothing but natural remedies pages. Yeah. Like wellness mama, homestead, whatever, natural guru. I'm like, oh, I see where we are here.
Yeah, this is right on the level of colloidal silver then.
It was right there. So apparently, for anybody who doesn't know, black radish is a radish. It's in the radish cruciferous vegetable family. It's mostly grown in Eastern Europe, but sometimes it's called Spanish radish too.
That's hard to say.
Spanish radish?
Spanish radish.
Maybe it sounds different in Spanish. I don't know. Or in Romanian or Russian or whatever else.
Ironically, it's exactly the same in Spanish. Yeah, it's one of those Spanish loan words.
Smacked, Jem.
Don't
Jem is lying. He's lying through his beard.
Yeah. So anyway, it's a really interesting looking thing. In case you want to go look it up, it's kind of beet-shaped.
Now I want to plant it.
Mm-hmm. Like it's got or it's some of those beets how they have like a flatter top or turnip shape, flatter top and then like heart shaped bottom, kind of, and it has
a booty.
Yeah, kind of. And it's got really dark black or dark brown skin to it, but the flesh is really white, like a radish is. So it's a radish, so people eat it there. But apparently it's been, I saw references to like Russian folk culture, folk medicine, so Eastern European cultures has been part of that. That's as far as I could really get from it. I couldn't really figure out why some sort of supplement companies talked about how it has chemicals in it that a lot of cruciferous vegetables have. Often it's sold relating to like regulating bile and digestion things.
Back to the humors.
Yeah, no, really, like truly, this is where it became very popular.
Yeah.
It's just kind of stayed in usage for time immemorial here.
Big Fraggles run the medicine industry.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you can either make your own syrup, which is generally a recipe of like slicing it very thinly and layering it with honey and letting it sit for a little bit. So then you also
yeah.
get honey in there
Honey,
for the
very
cough
important.
suppressant, right? Or you can juice it, which is like crushing it, and then you can add that to honey or other things.
Yeah.
But then I also found some recipes of like what to do with it, to cook
Yeah.
with it. So anyway, total folk medicine, total just like...
Layering it with honey and then like baking it with like a little bit of like a rough puff crust or something. That sounds great.
Well, I think it's going to be pretty bitter though, because it's in that family, right?
Well, that's what the honey's for.
I guess.
And I mean, if you leach them first, so you like leach it with some salt.
Yeah, they recommend that. Yeah.
Yeah, and then you add
Anyway.
some honey.
Okay.
I left it behind.
Anyway.
Didn't
yeah.
open it.
So that one was just right up there with like... I don't even know what else, but yeah. So that's black radish syrup. Very fun to look into.
No, I can barely make myself take like actual Dayquil. Just like swallowing something like that just squicks me right out. So I wasn't ever going to try that.
Fair enough.
Thank you for an impromptu segment, Laura. That was amazing.
So I was going to mention that it was interesting that nobody thought to say, hey, have you tried dextromethorphan, which is the active ingredient in Dayquil or Robitussin. So Dayquil, one of the reasons we always tell parents not to give their kids like cough syrup is because there's lots of different cough syrups. Some of them just have dextromethorphan. Some of them have dextromethorphan and acetaminophen, dextromethorphan and phenylephrine, like lots of other stuff in them too, which especially with acetaminophen, like you have to be very careful with dosing.
Yeah.
It's very safe provided you dose it appropriately. But unfortunately you can very easily overdose if you are a small person. Dextromethorphan also has a bunch of other effects, like if you drink more than the physician recommended amount, you can get quite high, I hear.
And light it on fire.
In a fun way or not a fun way?
Apparently in a fun way. Apparently it's been likened to NDMA.
Not quite.
No? Okay, well, I mean, I'm just reading.
Again, my mother listens to this podcast. But...
Anyway, it's one of those ones that will... Sometimes if a kid has a cough, it's just like Wake can say, you can try some dextromethorphan just straight, but it also is not without its side effects, and especially in kids who have a history of atopic conditions like asthma, eczema, seasonal allergies, that kind of thing, they can sometimes get the whole body itch, prompts like a histamine response. So anyway. There's lots of reasons why they might not have suggested dextromethorphan. It does a bunch of stuff to your body, but it's usually what people go to. It was interesting. They gave you a couple other things. But they did give you some medications that most of our listeners are probably familiar with. They recommended acetaminophen, or as they wrote it, paracetamol, which is what it's called in most non-North American English-speaking countries. So acetaminophen is a common analgesic and antipyretic. So it's a painkiller, analgesic, and a fever reliever, antipyretic, and that's fine. It's not going to change the duration of your symptoms, but it will relieve some of the symptoms. It's going to, if you've got a headache, it's probably going to help with that. If you've got a fever, chills, it's going to help with that a little bit. It'll help you be a bit more comfortable.
It is the only thing that definitely helped.
That's great. And like acetaminophen is one of those drugs that has provided you take the recommended dosing and you don't have any liver impairment. You have to be very careful if you have a history of liver disease because it's metabolized by the liver. Then you're fine. If you're an adult with a functioning liver, if you take less than 4 grams a day, you're fine. Okay? Let me stress.
In the time I've been speaking, over 80 million people have died of stress.
I should have stressed this about 45 seconds ago. Nothing you hear on this podcast is medical advice. I am not currently your doctor. I am not giving you medical advice. I'm just describing
the general state of the world.
The general state of the world and my understanding of it. It can be hepatotoxic, so dangerous to the liver at higher doses. But they gave you 500 milligrams PO TID, like 500 milligrams orally 3 times a day, which is fine. That's
about what I take on a normal day.
Yeah. So often in hospital, if usually you start with acetaminophen on the analgesic ladder, but we'll say start with, like, give them a gram, like right now, 1,000 milligrams. The next one that you had was Dexketoprofen. What did they call it, though? They used the brand name, starts with a P. Let me pull up the list here again. It was Tador.
That starts with a P.
Tador.
Okay. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, it does not start with a P. It starts with a T.
Oh, it would be a silent P with, like, pterodactyl.
Unfortunately, no. Yeah, Tador or Dexketoprofen. So that is another COX inhibitor. It's what we call an NSAID, which is short for non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drug. So steroids, like glucocorticoids, are very powerful anti-inflammatory medications. They're useful for a wide variety of things. And then there's this other class of COX 1, 2, and sometimes 3 inhibitors that are non-steroidal anti-inflammatories. So we don't have Dexketoprofen available in Canada or the United States, but it is available in Europe and South America. But we have sort of similar drugs like ibuprofen, marketed here as Advil, naproxen, marketed here as Aleve, Ketorolac, marketed here as Toradol, and those are the 3.
Nuprin's off the market now. Nuprin was one of those too, wasn't it?
I don't know.
Nuprin. Little, yellow, different.
It could very well be. Before my time.
It was from the 90s.
Well, before my time in medicine. And Dexketoprofen, as far as I can tell, has kind of a similar dosing range to Ketorolac, which is one of the more powerful NSAIDs that we use. So it's an anti-inflammatory, so it's really good for inflammatory pain like arthritis, for example. It would also be fine to use for comfort. It will also decrease your fever. It's an antipyretic. It does have much higher side effect profile than Tylenol, acetaminophen. It's less, I guess, generally less acutely dangerous in overdose, I would say, because it doesn't have the hepatotoxicity, but it does have a lot of side effects. So the most common we worry about is it increases your risk of gastric ulcers, bleeding, and
even over the short term.
Even over the short term. So it increases the risk. And in people who have a history of ulcers, non-steroidal anti-inflammatories are softly contraindicated. Mm-hmm. It also is dangerous if you have decreased kidney function because of the way the prostaglandin, the whole prostaglandin thing. I'm not going to go into more detail there because everybody's falling asleep already.
We're going for a high level skippy.
Right, yeah. So basically, you should be careful if you have a history of ulcers, decreased kidney function, cardiovascular disease, liver disease, or a history of clotting problems, because like other NSAIDs, it does inhibit clotting and platelet function, basically.
And a lot of those things
aspirin.
Sound like the same side effects as all the other painkillers.
Yeah. Most of them.
What about aspirin?
Yeah. So aspirin is also technically a non-steroidal anti-inflammatory.
Right.
Yeah. But it has more antiplatelet activity than the others. So another one, melatonin. So this
right. That was funny on that.
Yeah, this is funny. So she recommended melatonin 3 to 5 grams, I guess POQHS, so orally in the evening. This
would be weird any other time.
Yeah, this would be fine, but it actually has nothing to do with COVID. Now, would it be weird at any other time of the day? The evidence actually indicates that melatonin is most effective if you take it a few hours before trying to go to sleep.
Interesting, because I thought after you took it, you weren't supposed to look at your phone and stuff.
So the mechanism of action. So melatonin is a synthetic form of a natural hormone that we all have in our body that helps regulate our circadian rhythms. So other things that will disrupt your circadian rhythms, like looking at bright lights like a screen, will disrupt the effect of melatonin.
Right.
But it's also like the efficacy of melatonin is not large.
Right.
Okay. Like some people will report subjectively that they feel very drowsy after taking it, and that's fine. Every medication there's a little bit of inter-reporter variability, but if you've got insomnia, if you're having trouble sleeping, which if you have COVID, I'm sure you're going to have from time to time, there is some evidence that melatonin will help with sleep initiation. There is no evidence it will help with sleep maintenance. So what that means is it will help you fall asleep. It will not help you stay asleep. It's generally well tolerated. It's generally very safe. In Canada, and I believe in the United States, it is still regulated as a natural health product. Whereas in Europe, in most places in Europe, in Britain, and the UK generally, is a drug that requires a prescription. Whereas here, you can buy it over the counter because it's a natural health product. However, that also means that it doesn't have the same regulatory apparatus. It's not inspected in the same way, so you cannot be confident necessarily that when you're getting your melatonin, it's actually going to contain what it says.
So I have like some real melatonin.
Could be like aloe.
Yeah. So like I'm not saying it's adulterated necessarily, but what I'm saying is it is not inspected or held to the same standards here that prescription medications are. So exercise caution.
We learned this when we were exhausted in the UK and I just wanted to sleep, and Jem ran around to a bunch of pharmacies on a Sunday, which was not easy because they're not open there, just to find this out. And we're like, oh shit, we should have brought our own.
It's also funny that a bunch of the pharmacies, like Boots Pharmacy, famous, like the pharmacy you think of when you think of the UK, a lot of Bootses, like our Shoppers Drug Marts here, are mostly cosmetic stores and like little corner stores now. But unlike Shoppers Drug Mart, many of the Boots pharmacies no longer have pharmacies in them.
Yeah, that would be very upsetting.
I hit 3 different ones and none of them had an actual pharmacy. On the 4th, luckily, I found one.
If I went to a Shoppers and couldn't get like Tylenol, I would be very upset.
So they will. So the Bootses that don't have pharmacies will still have like a couple little over-the-counter things, but you couldn't get like anti-nauseant pills. You couldn't fill prescriptions.
That's awful.
Yeah, very frustrating. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Famotidine. So you were instructed to take famotidine 40 milligrams daily. So,
this was the point where when I looked it up, I was like, really? And like anti-indigestion drug? And again, she never asked me what very powerful anti-indigestion meds I might already be on.
Right. So famotidine, like ranitidine, is an over-the-counter, at least here in Canada. Famotidine and ranitidine, which are cousins, are both available over-the-counter. One of them is Zantac. I don't remember which one is Zantac. It doesn't matter. They are H2 receptor inhibitors, so they're a type of antihistamine, but they're basically like the H1 inhibitors, like Quercetin, those are good for like allergies, what we traditionally think of as like histamine responses, itchy eyes and nose. And then the H2 antihistamines, those are better for like acid reflux, generally is what we use them for. So famotidine is like an antacid medication. I don't know why it's here. I'm not aware of COVID predisposing folks to more GERD. However, maybe it's for gastroprotection if you're taking too much of that Dexketoprofen that she told you to take. However, if that's the case, she should have given you like a proton pump inhibitor because that's what you actually want for gastroprotection. A lot of times when people are on like naproxen every day or ibuprofen every day, you give them a PPI like omeprazole or esomeprazole or pantoprazole because they need gastroprotection.
Yeah. Which I'm already on.
Right.
And so she just said, and again, couldn't communicate complicated concepts, but she was like, COVID might upset your tummy. This will help.
Okay.
I was like, okay. Sure. If my tummy feels upset, maybe I'll try that one.
That's what I like. When I read it, I was just like, yeah, some people get like GI side effects from COVID. That sounds plausible.
Yeah, but this would not be the thing.
No.
The first line of defense.
No.
I did not take that one.
And now we're getting into some of the wild stuff. So
No.
Listeners,
Buckle up.
well, okay, so I'm used to wild stuff from like people giving you herbs and spices to cure your whatnots, but the Colonel's special blend. But
what's wrong with you? I say he did. The Colonel.
So she suggested Maxitrol. Which,
I don't even think I looked that one up.
So Maxitrol is a mix of 3 different medications. Usually,
that's why they're maxed out.
Yeah. Usually here in Canada, it's like ophthalmological drops, like for your eyes. Sometimes it's otic drops, like for your ears.
Oh yeah.
In this case, it was like a nasal drop or spray or something.
Yeah.
So it's a mixture of neomycin and polymyxin B, which are 2 different topical antibiotics, and then dexamethasone, which is a steroidal anti-inflammatory, or a steroid, right? So it's not an antiviral. It will not do anything to prevent or treat COVID or prevent or treat the spread of COVID or anything like that. I guess if you had like a sinusitis, a bacterial sinusitis, maybe. I mean, it wouldn't be my go-to, but it would like... So what it would do is it would kill any bacteria in your nose, and it would decrease like local inflammation if your nose was like itchy and uncomfortable. But why? Why are you doing this?
Might stop nose from running seemed to be her logic.
Saline exists.
I totally agree with you.
Or an intranasal steroid. Why the antibiotics? You just want to make every bacterium as resistant as possible to antibiotics.
And she was very specific with me that I get the one with antibiotics. Because she was like, there are 2. This part is important.
Why?
I truly do not know.
So
she seemed to think that if I got COVID, I was going to be susceptible to every other possible thing that was going to attack me all at once, and I'll get in.
So this is true in some senses, okay? If we have an infection, we are more likely to get a super infection or like an opportunistic infection, right? Because we're run down, we're using up our immune resources, oversimplifying, but generally you use different cell lines, different white blood cells to fight viruses versus bacteria. But
this is why my immune system suddenly went to shit when I moved in with Dave, because it had to deal with cats all of a sudden that it had never had to deal with before. Got overwhelmed.
Well, like the problem is, as we were talking about with boosting your immune system, it didn't have to deal with the cats. It decided to deal with the cats.
Yeah, sorry, I interrupted you.
Yeah. No, that's okay. So the other thing that's happening is when your mucosa, when your mucous membranes in your mouth and your eyes and your nose are all like inflamed and they're leaking and they get like cracked because you're blowing your nose all the time, you are like you actually have physical like inflammation. And just inflammation in and of itself increases the permeability of your membranes.
Makes you more porous.
Yeah, and then also when there's cracks and fissures that can form, that is another path to entry. So she's not wrong that this increases your susceptibility, but prophylactic antibiotics, so antibiotics used to prevent an infection, are very controversial, and generally we rarely use them. There are a few cases where we use them, but this is not something that I would.
Would you say like 2 or 3 or 4 different kinds at once would be a great idea then if you have COVID?
So let's move on to the next one.
This is her tourist package.
Right.
I don't have to see this patient ever again. You're someone else's problem.
Moxifloxacin.
Yep.
Wow.
400 milligrams PO daily. This is bonkers.
Yes.
This is a completely absurd choice.
Okay. We got a forehead touch, ladies and gentlemen, and everybody else.
So, moxifloxacin is a fluoroquinolone for medical listeners, it is a very effective broad-spectrum antibiotic. It has very good gram-positive effects, pretty solid gram-negative coverage. So long as we're talking about aerobic bacteria, it actually has a little bit of anaerobic coverage as well, I think.
We haven't even gotten to the end, and I'm just laughing about how badly she wanted to nuke my entire biota. Everything. Just kill it all.
So it will have absolutely no effect on COVID, of course.
No. You know what? Just sometimes you gotta start fresh, Ashlyn. Just start fresh.
Yes.
As you're flying.
Cleanse out the system.
Yeah.
As you have 3 flights ahead of you. It's great. Let's just...
Yeah, this is the true colon cleanse.
Yeah.
Sorry.
So as with the nasal spray, I'm guessing this is meant as a preventative against opportunistic infections, but this, if I was a little iffy on the topical antibiotics, I am more than a little iffy about the broad spectrum systemic antibiotics. So in general, we try to reserve systemic antibiotics for confirmed infection, and this, like a fluoroquinolone, is one that we reserve for when you have a confirmed infection and a better choice isn't available. Even among broad-spectrum antibiotics, fluoroquinolones are not really the first-line treatment for anything. Now, I'm sure some infectious disease specialist, which I am not, is going to come and say, well, actually,
Yeah,
Jam.
for anything common.
Yeah.
And Jam is not your doctor, folks.
Yeah, I am. This is not medical advice. This is medical rage. So, why would I not give somebody a fluoroquinolone as a first line for
Why,
COVID
Jam?
or anything else? Well, there is a laundry list of well-established side effects for fluoroquinolones. Would anyone like to guess what the most common is? You won't guess.
Death?
No,
Infection.
not death.
Diarrhea.
Spontaneous rupture of the Achilles tendon.
What? No.
Yes.
So I think it's hilarious when things like this are just, I don't want to say random, but just like so weirdly specific,
Yeah.
but also feels like not connected and just like, why not other tendons?
Yeah. So this is one of those that you like need to know in med school, like, or at least your attendings will like drill into you.
Mm-hmm.
So you give someone a fluoroquinolone, what is going to happen to them when they go on a run? Yeah. They're going to go down like Achilles. So yeah, it is like the agranulocytosis from clozapine. You will be expected to know this one. Yeah, so it one of the side effects is they tend to weaken tendons, and that the Achilles tendon, big strong tendon under a lot of strain.
Is it because it's like you said, one of the ones that's under the most pounds per square inch or whatever? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's not like the Achilles tendon is particularly susceptible, not because of moxifloxacin or other fluoroquinolones, but just because it's the one that's doing the most work, generally speaking. It gets a lot of stretch. Other side effects you can get are like peripheral neuropathy, so like numbness, tingling, and like terrible nerve pain. You can also get like central nervous system problems. So
does that last? Does that last once you've discontinued the drug, or does it resolve?
So the Achilles tendon rupture will last.
But the neuropathy.
Until repaired. But the neuropathies, that I'm actually not sure about.
Okay, I know that's a sidebar, but some things it's there, and other things I'll like go away once the drug's gone.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
I wouldn't know if to tell that nerve pain from the standard nerve pain.
Yeah, so I my guess, because it's like one of those black box warnings, my guess is that it is probably permanent to some degree, or there's some risk of permanence.
I'm very happy I didn't take these.
So moxifloxacin will be used for patients with like a known acute bacterial sinusitis, where like there's a contraindication, or like I think certain community-acquired pneumonias too, where you're like, we can't give beta-lactams to, we
can't give this other class.
The most common class that we'll use for like gram-positive. Yeah, they're allergic or whatever, but you don't just give it to somebody in case they get a bacterium.
Yeah.
Just in case.
Which brings us to, I think, the last one on the list, Fluconazole. Fluconazole, 150 milligrams, PO times 1. Just take
Very
one dose.
familiar to many of our listeners.
Fluconazole, yeah. So, this isn't an antiviral. This is an antifungal. COVID, not a fungus.
Everything.
Like, you got onychomycosis, you got a fungal nail infection, you got blastomycosis. You were visiting Kenora and digging in the dirt, and now you've got a fungal pneumonia. You have cryptococcal meningitis. Oh, really?
Yeah. Years ago. Yeah.
Oh.
He used to work with my ex-husband.
Sorry to hear that.
I didn't know him well, but it was just really weird. In Kenora.
Yeah.
Yeah, you hear about that, people who, like, out in the cabin.
Yeah, we actually have it here in Lake the Woods too. It's in the soil. Cryptococcal meningitis, you can get that around here too. Yeah, sure, go nuts. Take your fluconazole. You have a bad yeast infection and topical stuff ain't doing the trick. Have at it. But for COVID? Why? Like, why would you do this to yourself?
Jem, don't tell your patients to take topical stuff first.
Well,
no. Take the flu.
Take the one pill and be done with it.
Take the one pill and be done with it.
Okay, that's fine. Okay. I'm not. I have never had a vaginal yeast infection. I've never had a vagina, but the topical stuff is usually what I would. It's hard. Okay, fungus is hard to deal with because generally speaking, because it's like spores are everywhere. We're all colonized with candida and other fungal spores, and fungus is really hard to get rid of. All of the topical treatments for fungal infections suck. They are not very effective. However, and the oral medications, the systemic doses, are more effective. However, unlike bacteria and viruses, fungi are more similar organisms to us than those things are. And so antifungals tend to have more side effects that can be more devastating. Well, like there's lots of devastating side effects to antibacterials and like that, but they tend, especially the really powerful stuff, tends to be not very well tolerated. So that's why even though there's like a 5 to 10% cure rate with a topical treatment for like your fungal nail infection, we still try the topical treatment first because there's only like a 40 to 50% cure rate with the oral, and it's still
But consider also goo on labia feel real bad.
Goo. A falling cravat.
Multiple times a day for many days.
Real bad.
All right.
For 10% chance? That sounds like a no.
And also,
10% chance. 10% chances for nails.
Yeah,
Okay, has a higher
we're
cure
talking
rate
about
for
different.
We were jumping around on the body parts.
For yeast infections, I think it's pretty. I don't know. It treats the topical stuff does work.
It is much more effective than for onychomycosis.
I came of age in the 7 suppositories, like one a day for a week. Don't. The single pill. We're great now. We're happy.
I'm very happy for you. It can also lead to devastating arrhythmias. So I would recommend. I would recommend personally. Okay.
Would you recommend taking it just because you got COVID?
No. And personally, for me, I would like personally to have an EKG before I take fluconazole. Just me. Just because some people at a baseline have a prolonged QT, which means that there's a delay between the QRS complex, which is like your ventricular pattern on an EKG, and the T wave, which is where your heart repolarizes after depolarizing. So basically what that means, some people just have like a slight delay before their heart repolarizes. Fluconazole, one of the side effects is it can prolong that delay further and when you prolong the QT too much, it can trigger something called torsade de pointe, which is twisting of the points, which
goes all wonky.
Yeah, your heart basically, it's an arrhythmia that usually results in asystole, which is the good old flat line. Not good.
Not good.
Like, yes. And there's lots of drugs that that do
Yes.
that, and
Ondansetron.
EKGs are not
Ondansetron is another
needed.
one. That's a common antiemetic.
A lot of
anti
And also something that I had on me in Romania.
Ondansetron is a great drug. It's a lot cleaner than diphenhydramine. Or
It allowed me to go to Europe where they don't have weed.
So
than dimenhydrinate, which is Gravol. Diphenhydramine is not Gravol.
Is that Claritin?
Dramamine?
No, Dramamine is Gravol.
Diphenhydramine is Benadryl.
Oh, okay,
Excuse me.
that's the one.
Diphenhydramine, dimenhydrinate. Occasionally, I say one and mean the other.
Yeah.
So something I was quite curious about, Jem, are any of these things that I was prescribed altogether actually contraindicated with any of the other things that I was prescribed on this list? It seems likely.
So, not as far as I can tell. I don't think any of them have a contraindication with each other. I would like to see your DPIN, your medication list.
Yeah, because there's definitely things on that list that are...
Yeah.
Fluconazole can also cause necrotizing skin rashes or hair loss, like alopecia. Like, these are rare
Many
side
bad
effects.
things that can happen.
As I said earlier, nothing in life is risk-free.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? So I have given people fluconazole. I gave somebody ondansetron 2 days ago. Although that same day I was going to give another person ondansetron, and I said, no, I haven't done an EKG on her yet. I got her an EKG and she had a long QT, so I didn't give her ondansetron. And maybe I'm being overcautious. Nothing in life is risk-free. But I think it's important to recognize and take a balanced approach to risk.
You and the Romanian doctor are on opposite sides of the spectrum.
We're just I'm very glad that you have the medical knowledge and the ability to Google and know what you are being offered and to make that informed decision for yourself.
Yeah. Probably it wouldn't have hurt me if I had taken everything that she told me to take. But I probably would have had a worse time. Mm-hmm. I would have had a bad time coming home through London, etc. Probably losing everything out of my body because my entire system was being nuked. It would have been a bad time.
So So one of the reasons that you might need to take fluconazole is if you've taken a fluoroquinolone,
this was
nuked your entire system.
This situation.
Yeah, and once all of your system is destroyed, you can take the thing that's going to make your tummy feel better.
Yeah,
exactly.
Yeah.
Chase it down.
Because one of the risk factors for a yeast infection is having just taken systemic antibiotics.
Yeah.
So,
and none of this was necessary to make me significantly increase my chances of getting through COVID.
Yeah. So as you mentioned off the top, and the first thing that struck me when I looked at this list is what's not on it, which is an antiviral like Paxlovid. So Paxlovid is actually two different antivirals. It's a mixture of nirmatrelvir and ritonavir. And don't get me wrong, most people, maybe even all people, most people definitely do not need Paxlovid. For most people, conservative management of COVID is fine.
Totally.
Paxlovid is really hard to get. It's easier to get now, I think, but when it was first available, there were a lot of shortages. Most people don't need it.
It's only for rich people.
And not here. In the States, it's only for rich people. Here, it's only for sick people. Mm-hmm. But there is very limited evidence that, especially for somebody like you, who is young and healthy and...
Healthy seeming.
There's very poor evidence that it would benefit you at all. There, in the early days of COVID, there's lots of evidence suggesting that it would decrease the risk of you needing to be put on a ventilator. Mm-hmm. It would decrease the risk of death in people who have or are at risk of moderate to severe COVID, requiring hospitalization. Recent evidence has sort of actually thrown that into question, but that is probably also because by far the predominant strains of COVID that are circulating now, as compared to the early strains, are more contagious but less severe.
Right.
So
Hooray,
the baseline risk of somebody needing to be put on a ventilator for a COVID infection are already much lower, which means that the average benefit of Paxlovid is significantly less. So it's much harder to tease out statistical or clinical significance. So a lot of the trials sort of the way the researchers will often phrase it is they trend toward significance.
I
which
hate
is
when I read that.
Weasel words if ever I've heard them. And like a lot of what we've discussed, I would say worse than a lot of what we've discussed, Paxlovid has a huge list of medication interactions.
Yeah.
So
I also super wasn't looking forward to the penny taste that I had heard
it
about,
tastes like you've been licking pennies.
But I did think it was my impression that it would lessen the severity of symptoms in most people.
So that is a common perception, and it is not, my read of the evidence is that is not true.
Not supported.
Or not at least not supported by the best available evidence right now. A lot of people, especially in the States where you can get it
in the States, it was very
easily.
easy to get. Yeah. So I heard a lot of friends who had experiences with it for sure.
Yeah. So you'll always have sort of individual case reports. You can take that with a grain of salt, I guess. But there is...
She wasn't prescribed any salt.
There is not a lot of convincing evidence for sort of benefit on the outcomes they were looking at.
Right.
To be fair, the research on COVID has rarely, if ever, actually centered how well you feel. It has mostly been focused on like risk of mortality.
Yeah.
There is, I do know, some, not great, but there is some evidence that taking Paxlovid may decrease your risk of like long COVID symptoms.
Right.
That, again, that's one of those where I think the research trended toward significance, but was not quite there. So, yeah. However, you cannot take Paxlovid if you are taking a bunch of antiarrhythmics like amiodarone or flecainide, if you're taking cholesterol-lowering medications like imvastatin or lovastatin, if you're taking hypnotics like midazolam or trizolam, if you're taking antiepileptics like carbamazepine, phenobarbital, or phenytoin, if you're taking certain preventative medications like ergotamine for vascular headaches like migraines or colchicine to prevent gout, and even some herbal products like the good old St. John's wort, which interacts with everything.
Absolutely.
Do not take St. John's wort.
Yeah.
That's advice.
Yeah, you can't take it. I think sildenafil was also contraindicated. Yeah, there's lots, basically.
Speak to your doctor if you think Paxlovid is right for you.
Yeah, so lots of medication interactions. So definitely not the old silver bullet.
Mm-hmm.
So...
That was colloidal silver.
Right.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely not the colloidal silver bullet. So, once again, COVID, it is a virus. We do not...
4 years later, and we're still reiterating this.
Do not do antibiotics for viral infections, okay? Why? Because you will get diarrhea. You could get rashes. You will get post-treatment colonization of like fungal infections, like yeast infection. You can get when you take antibiotics. Yeah, right. Good.
That's the best. They just wait until you're down and they swoop right in.
You'll be in the museum before you know it. Sorry, Jen.
Lock up your heritage, guys.
Sometimes you can wipe
less
out
than an Elgin marble. You could end up in a museum.
Why did I think this would be a quick segment?
I don't know. You had like 20 things on your list, and you can't not say the long version.
Yep.
C. diff.
I said 5 minutes.
We got it.
This is your fault.
No, it's my fault.
There's a lot of really bad things that can happen if you take antibiotics, and you're not going to get any of the benefits that they would do if you actually had a bacterial infection.
Right. So what do we do for viral infections? It's a bunch of basic stuff. I was going to title the segment What I Would Recommend, but again, this is not medical advice. I'm not recommending anything, but I can tell you what I do And what I will often recommend to patients when I say you have a viral infection, which is to rest as much as possible, to stay hydrated, drink plenty of fluids. If you're having trouble like eating food, drink caloric fluids like broths or juice. Wash your hands frequently. Mask up when you're around other people. If you have to be around other people, try not to be around other people. Cover your mouth when you cough. And manage your symptoms. So use antipyretics such as acetaminophen or NSAIDs like ibuprofen, naproxen, or yes, even Dexketoprofen, as recommended here, to make you more comfortable while you're sick. You can use an intranasal saline spray to keep those mucous membranes moist.
Not one with antibiotics.
Not one with antibiotics. And like also, you don't need a saline nasal spray if you don't like that. You can grab a humidifier, take a nice warm shower, hot bath.
Have a bath? Get a bike!
Like that's all very pleasant stuff, right? And see a doctor immediately if you have trouble breathing at any point, or if your symptoms change significantly or worsen later in the course of an illness, which might suggest that you have some kind of pneumonia or another superimposed infection on top of your virus. And the last thing is, remember that with a viral infection, the cough always lasts longer than you think it will. That's pretty normal. But if your fever lingers on for weeks, or like you're getting pain in your chest, you might have a pneumonia. Go and get checked out. One of the things that I have started doing that I love is using a viral prescription pad. Okay? So this is something that has been growing in popularity in Canada among primary care providers and emergency docs in the last couple of years. There's a few different ones that are available. Our Choosing Wisely campaign has one that you can print out. We've got some. I'm working in Southern Health region in Manitoba right now, and they have their own. But
tell us what it is, Jim.
It is like a prescription pad. It is like a prescription pad, but it says, "Hey, I'm not prescribing you antibiotics. That's because you have been diagnosed with a virus, not a bacteria. Antibiotics are not effective against viruses. And these are the things that, if we gave you an antibiotic, these are the things that would happen or that you would be at risk of that we don't want, like diarrhea, rashes, colonization, etc. This is the kind of virus that you have, and I like check off bronchitis or a sinusitis or a pharyngitis or what have you. These are the recommendations, and it'll include things like rest, stay hydrated, and I can check off Tylenol or ibuprofen for symptomatic management, and then it'll give you this is the expected course of your symptoms, and it'll give them specific recommendations. But it's something that I can write a little thing on. I sign it at the bottom like a prescription pad, and I tear it off and give it to them, and it gives them a little summary of what their symptoms are expected to be, how long they should last, when to come back, and what they can do. And it gives them I got a thing. Coming here resulted in an actual assessment and actual recommendations, and I've got my list, like you had, Ashlyn. And so hopefully it will allow people to feel that sense of ownership and control over their situation and their illness. I can do something
about it, and it was worth it.
Actionable steps. I didn't just come here and get sent home without empty-handed, which I have found in my personal experience, which is an N of, several dozen, but I found it very, very helpful.
For someone like me, I would find that kind of patronizing.
Yeah. That's what I'm reading it as.
But I wouldn't go in. I wouldn't go in for something viral.
So you're coming in with the
knowledge.
With that knowledge.
I understand that I have an extreme privileged amount of medical knowledge.
Yeah, and so a lot of people will ask. So what? Why don't I don't qualify for antibiotics? Why aren't you giving me antibiotics? Because we are coming at this with a lot of sort of privilege, a lot of privileged knowledge. And this, I found, it's not just helpful. It's not just helpful to share that knowledge. I tend to over-explain
Really?
This is news to
Tell
everybody.
me about it.
I tend to
We've been on
over-explain,
a 5-minute, 30-minute segment, so.
but it's helpful for somebody to be able to reference back to as well.
Yeah.
Like if somebody says, well, why didn't you get antibiotics, a spouse or whatever?
Yeah, it's like I do see it, I think, in my mind, because I have also been hearing the same push for a very long time. So my question is, like, are there still as many people coming in demanding antibiotics as we heard, like, in the 2000s or the 90s or something like that? Like, and again, I'm not sure that, like, I, like Lauren, and I'm in a very different place than perhaps other people are, but sometimes it's like, I am wondering, like, is it as much as it used to be, or is
This
it
list of
something
stuff
else?
feels like a reaction to those people who come in saying, give me antibiotics. She's just sort of like skipping a few steps because I certainly never asked for them.
Yeah.
I also, so that's very interesting. We also, like, the social work, social science side of me now is really thinking about this and in how we've been socialized to receive medical care, and also how people are typically or how and who experiences medical care in different ways. And so, like, one of my questions too is like, well, I'm curious, is it an even distribution of people asking for antibiotics, or is it like, do you see certain genders more, or age groups more, or parents versus non-parents, or some of these kinds of things? Because I'm also jumping to, like, well, I also wonder too if people haven't been trained to, like, or expect being dismissed by their doctor, then having a prescription in hand doesn't feel as dismissed. And so I wonder if that plays into it. I don't know. These are like extraneous thoughts that come up, and I'm not saying that is true or happening. I'm just curious.
Would like to see the research.
I think you're bringing up a lot of important points, and a lot of people I think are primed to feel dismissed by their primary care provider because they've had the experience of being dismissed by their primary care provider. And so when we're expecting or fearing being dismissed, we can, I think, sometimes interpret things that are not dismissals as dismissals or something like that. I see it less as I'm prescribing you rest and fluids, and more as this is a very convenient summary that I can give people of the recommendations that I've discussed with them. And most people, in my limited experience, most people have seemed to appreciate having that list. I have written out similar lists for people with more complicated non-viral illnesses where we have a lot of recommendations. When I'm in the ER, I'm writing out discharge summaries for them and like that. So it is also more convenient for me to be able to have a ready-made one where I can check off this, and this.
Yeah. The idea of having a list so people aren't just having to remember what was said and having it, like, clear and understandable. Sure. Totally.
Who would like to go first?
Ashlyn, you want to?
I have a new job. It's very exciting.
Yay!
I recently applied to work for an organization in our city that feeds people. Their slogan is loving the underloved, and they needed somebody who could 4 days a week look at the random stuff in their pantry and whatever soup was given to me by the other kitchen and make enough food to feed 150 people. As well as, while doing that, keeping things like bingo and cultural programming running smoothly, making sure they have snacks and everybody is having a good time. So, like, running events and cooking feast at the same time. So essentially the job that I've been training for my whole life.
It is amazing how, like, tailor-made this job seems to be.
Yeah. It's a very Ashlyn job. And it's like, even the hours are great for me. I don't have to be there until 11:30 in the afternoon, and I get home at 6. Like, it's great. The crew is all amazing. I get to feed people every day. It's basically what I've been doing out of my home once a week for as many people as want to show up every day. And I have, like, people that will help me do it, and they're paying me real money instead of me paying for the ingredients. It's wild. They're going to give me like professional development days and vacation days and sick days and benefits, my own benefits for the first time in my life.
Amazing.
Wild time. So yeah, I'm looking forward to cooking 4 days a week and
Still running what's for dinner on the side.
Still running what's for dinner.
Not.
I've committed to the rest of the year's worth of menus, so I can't back out. At least that's what I'm telling myself. We'll see.
I hope you kept them a little simpler.
Yeah, it's mostly like a main and some cookies now. So we'll see. But going to be a new chapter of my life where I pay down my visa instead of racking it up.
Yay!
My something nice is I'm just very happy for Ashlyn. They come home every day feeling like seeming energized and happy about the day at work, and it's good to see. And also the cats are doing well. We did a really fun thing for Halloween. We sat out near the sidewalk and our whole yard looked like we were a couple of forest witches, and that was great.
That's fun.
Yeah.
Nice.
That's it.
My something nice was also Halloween. I like Halloween quite a lot. As a family, we enjoy Halloween.
And see their yard.
Their yard is something else.
Jem goes all out on the yard, and I go all out on the kids' costumes. This year, because of being in school and working more than I was supposed to be working, I opted not to make a costume for myself, but I did create a really cool puppet for my youngest's costume, and then the eldest got in on her costume making as well. So that was really good.
I always remember your paper bag princess costume.
Oh, that was so good.
That was so good.
I loved it. I couldn't sit in it though. No. I could only lean, but it was excellent.
My something nice is the look on my kids' faces in this photo.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I was showing this around when Laura sent it to me. I was working ER in St. Anne, and Laura sent it to me, and I was showing it around. I'm like, look at their faces. They're so excited. So this is a picture. Comic-Con came to town, and I got all of us tickets, and I then had my schedule changed, so I had to work a 12-hour shift in the ER that day. So
couldn't go to Comic-Con.
So I didn't get to go. But one of the reasons that I was so dead set on going was because both of the kids love Lord of the Rings, and Elijah Wood and Billy Boyd were going to be there, and I wanted to take them to meet them. And I was very sad and disappointed that I wasn't going to be there, and they were disappointed too. But when I saw that picture and just the glowing look on their faces, like, I have never seen Kira look that excited. And honestly, Elijah Wood looks pretty excited too. He puts on a good show. Mm-hmm. So seeing that picture, that is my something nice this month. Another something nice is this is the first day in 3 full weeks that I'm not working. And not working is nice.
Working is good and not working is also good.
Correct.
That's essentially what I said. So the gig is only 4 days a week, which is also great. I get most Fridays off except for the one Friday that we have our food bank. So working 4 days a week when I have had the last 10 years to just work for myself it was a change, but I am looking forward to getting used to it and having Fridays off to recover and snuggle my cat.
Nice.
I am not up for doctor hours. Never.
No.
Nobody is.
No.
Yeah,
unsustainable.
It's a true story, and this is what I remind him all the time.
Yeah, I mean, I worked 20 days in a row, but it's not like only...
Jem.
Some of them were 12 hours.
Jem.
And none of them were really that much more than 12s.
You're drinking the Kool-Aid when you justify this stuff. Mm-hmm. Don't do it.
Even if it's ironic. Because your brain will start to think of those
mostly ironic. There were a lot of days that were only like 8.5 hours.
What are you doing? Okay, we're going to end this.
Working reasonable amounts of hours is good, which is why we're going to end now.
Exactly.
Thank you for joining us today, everyone.
Thank you for sharing your medical history with us, Ashlyn.
It was a good time.
All right. Awesome.
Don't get sick in Romania.
There you go.
Try not to get sick anywhere.
That's medical advice.
Wash your hands.
Yeah.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Show notes and references for all of our episodes are available at lueepodcast.com, where you can also find links to donate or get in touch. If you'd like to support the show, the best way to do that is with a review on Apple Podcasts, or wherever else you found us, or by sharing this episode with a friend.
Life. Don't talk to me about life.
Moi, je parle français.
Un petit peu.
Yeah, but...
Jeg snakker norsk.
Yeah, I don't speak whatever the hell that was.
Jeg snakker. I speak Norwegian, Norsk.
I heard the Norsk part. I'm like, that's some
It all
Scandinavian
flowed together,
stuff.
so I didn't pick it out.
Yeah. And I've been learning the Swedish so I can go to the bork, bork, bork.
Lingonberry.
Lingonberry.
Blueberry? Raspberry? Lingonberry.
Lingonberry.
What could it be?
Is that like a big part of Duolingo?
No, it's from
Learning various-
Taskmaster.
Oh,
yeah.
One of the tasks was to find out what the Swedish guy's favorite food was.
Oh,
Yeah, I
And part of
remember
it
that
was
one. I remember that
lingonberry,
one.
and she
Yeah.
just kept guessing different berries because she figured, well, it ends in berry. It's got to be something I know. He was like, lingonberry.
Jordbær is strawberry. Blærbær is blueberry.
At the beginning of September, I flew across the ocean. Oh, yeah, I got to introduce people. Please don't put that in.
Or their English language website is geared towards being able to sell in predominantly English-speaking companies, especially considered that they have a distribution center in England. Nope. Oh yes, I did write companies. I did that again.